friends, I am going to introduce myself. I am Shri Duryodhan, ex-principal and reader in English of GPR College Kuntara, District Sambalpur, State Odisha. Today I am going to teach you an interesting poem called The INCHCAPE Rock, written by Southey. Introduction. Robert Southey was an English romantic poet and poet laureate from 1813 to his death in 1843. He is a prolific letter writer, literary scholar, essay writer, historian, and biographer. Warm up. The INCHCAPE Rock is a perilous reef off the east coast of Scotland, near the mouth of the River Tay. The rock was a few inches above the surface of the sea in low tide and was completely covered by the sea in high tide or when the sea was low. Many ships had been wrecked by this INCHCAPE rock when it was covered by the sea. This poem is based on this notorious INCHCAPE rock. In this poem, Southey decrees the evil doing of Sir Ralph the rover, who pays with his life for the crime of removing the INCHCAPE bell and his sins against humanity. Text 1. Unit 1. No stir in the air, no stir in the sea was still as she could be. Her sails from heaven received no motion, her keel was steady in the ocean. That means there was an INCHCAPE rock some few inches above the surface of the sea in low tide, and the rock was completely covered by the sea in high tide or when the sea was rough. Anyhow, there was no disturbance in the air, there was no stir in the sea. The ship was calm and quiet and still as she could be. Her sails from heaven received no motion. Her keel was steady in the ocean. That means the bottom part of the ship was steady in the ocean. Without either sign or sound of their shock, the waves flowed over the INCHCAPE rock. So little they rose, so little they fell, they did not move the INCHCAPE bell. In other words, there was neither sign nor sound of their shock. The waves of the sea flowed over the INCHCAPE rock a few inches above it. So little they rose, so little they fell, means the waves rose up and the little waves fell down on the ocean. The waves did not move the INCHCAPE rock, and really it is true. How could the small little waves move the INCHCAPE rock which was very gigantic and big in size. The abbot of Aberbrother had placed that bell on the INCHCAPE rock. On a boy in the storm, it floated and swung, and over the waves its warning rung. I mean to say that there was a man, a wicked man, a wrong man, whose name was Abbot of Aberbrother. He had placed that big gigantic bell on the surface of the INCHCAPE rock. There was a boy in the storm which floated and swung, and the waves was a warning for all the whole of locality. When the rock was hit by the source soil, that means when the INCHCAPE rock was hit by the surf of the ocean which swelled, the mariners heard the warning bell. At that time, the mariners of the ship could hear the warning of the big gigantic bell which was attached to the INCHCAPE rock. And they knew the perilous rock. So everybody else knew the dangerous and perilous INCHCAPE rock, and blessed the abbot of Aberbrother. And the rock blessed the abbot of Aberbrother. In its second warm up. Wicked people get pleasure by causing pain to others, don't they? Read the following unit of the text and note how a wicked man like Sir Ralph the Rover does mischief out of malice towards the abbot. Text. The sun in heaven was shining gay. That means the sun in the sky was shining very brightly and beautifully. All the things were joyful on that day. So each and everything was joyful on that day from morning till night. The seabirds screamed as they wheeled round, and there was joy in their sound. So the birds of the sea, which were called seabirds, they shouted and screamed as they went round and round the rock, and there was joy, gay, and gaiety in their sound. The boy of the INCHCAPE bell was seen. In other words, the boy of the INCHCAPE rock was visible, a darker speck on the ocean green. There was a small spot or a speck on the green ocean. Sir Ralph the Rover walked his deck. By that time, Sir Ralph the Rover, the wicked man, walked up and down on the deck of the ship. And he fixed his eye on the darker speck, and that notorious and wicked man fixed both of his eyes on the dark or speck or spot of the bell. He felt the cheering power of spring. It made him whistle, it made him sing. So the wicked and notorious man, whose name was Sir Ralph Duryodhan, was full of joy and gaiety, and he felt the cheering power of the spring season, which is the queen season of the year. It made him whistle and it made him sing. So he was so happy that he was whistling and he was singing, he was dancing, he was lip-syncing. His heart was mirthful to excess. And the very heart of that notorious man was full of mirth, joy, gaiety to an extent of excess. But the rover's mirth was wickedness. But in the corner of his heart, there was a sense of wickedness. His eye was on the INCHCAPE float. Quoth he, my man, put out the boot. His eyes were on the INCHCAPE rock. Soon his man put out the boot. And now, and row me to the INCHCAPE rock. I will plague the abbot of Aberbrothock. So the notorious man called Sir Ralph Duryodhan rowed his boat to the INCHCAPE rock, and he did harm the abbot of Aberbrothock. The boat is lowered, the boatmen row, and to the INCHCAPE rock they go. Sir Ralph bent over them the boat, and he caught the bell from the INCHCAPE float. The boat of Sir Ralph Duryodhan lowered, and all the boatmen rowed to the INCHCAPE rock. Sir Ralph Duryodhan, the notorious man, bent over the boat and caught the bell from the INCHCAPE rock. Down sung the bell with a gurgling sound. The bubbles rose and burst around. Quoth Sir Ralph, the next who comes to the rock won't bless the abbot of Aberbrothock. In other words, the big gigantic bell sang down the ocean with a gurgling sound, with a big sound. And the bubble rose and burst around. Sir Ralph said, the man who would come to the rock would not bless the abbot of Aberbrothock. Unit 3, warm-up. Do you know sin always coils on the sinner? Read the following unit of the text and note how Sir Ralph Duryodhan pays the sin he has committed. Text. Sir Ralph Duryodhan sailed away. He scoured the seas for many a day, and now grown rich with plundered store, he steered his course for Scotland shore. In other words, the notorious man called Sir Ralph Duryodhan sailed away, and he neared towards Scotland shore. He became very rich with plunder store, means he plundered the ships of the ocean and he steered his way for the seashore of Scotland. Southey has overspreads the sky. They cannot see the sun on high. The wind hath blown gale all day. At evening it hath died away. In other words, the sky looked huge, indistinct. They cannot see the sun on high. That means they could not see the sun which was above the sky. The wind hath blown gale all day. That means the wind was blowing very joyfully, smoothly, gently around the day. At evening it hath died away. And when with the approach of evening the wind died away, means completed. On the deck the rover takes its stand, so dark it is they see no land. Quoth Sir Ralph, it will be lighter soon, for there is the dawn of the rising moon. In other words, the deck of the ship of rover takes his stand, took his stand, and it was so dark that no land was seen. Sir Ralph thought it would be lighter soon, for there was the dawn of the rising moon. Means the next day came. Canst hear, said one, the breakers roar, for methinks we should be near the shore. Now where we are, I cannot tell, but I wish I could hear the INCHCAPE bell. That means the roaring sound of the waves and tides and breaks could not hear, and he thought they should be near the seashore. But what happened? He could not tell, and he wished he could hear the INCHCAPE bell, but there was no sound. They hear no sound. The swell is strong, though the wind has fallen, they drift along till the vessel strike with a shivering shock. Oh Christ, it is the INCHCAPE rock. That means they could not hear any kind of sound, and the waves rose and swelled strongly towards the sky. The wind died away. The vessel struck with a shivering shock. The man, the wicked man, Sir Ralph the rover, cried out, "Oh Christ, was it the INCHCAPE rock?" Sir Ralph the rover tore his hair. He cast himself in despair. The waves rose in on every side. The ship is sinking beneath the height. That means Sir Ralph the rover, the notorious man, the wicked man, uprooted all of his hair from the head, and he cursed himself out of disappointment, despair, and despondency. The waves rushed from every side, and the ship was sinking gradually towards the bottom of the ocean. But even in his dying fear, one dreadful sound could the rover hear, a sound as if with the INCHCAPE bell, the devil below was ringing his bell. In other words, when he was going to die out of fear, out of danger, he could hear another dreadful sound, a sound which he had never heard during his life. That was the ringing bell of INCHCAPE Rock. The devil and the Satan below was ringing his bell, means he was ringing the death bell of that Sir Ralph the Rover, the notorious, the wicked man. Thank you. Thanking you.